applicants. So if the candidates could take their seats and we'll get started. Let's turn it over to Jeff.
How do you want to do?
Sit where you are.
You're in alphabetical order.
Welcome, everybody. Tonight is a congressional candidate forum sponsored by the Health Kitchen Neighborhood Coalition. I'll tell you what that is in a second. West Side Neighborhood Alliance and Housing Conservation Coordinators. First, I'm Joe Rostuccia. I am the moderator of the Health Kitchen Neighborhood Coalition. I'm also the executive director of Clinton Housing, a not-for-profit that builds affordable housing in Hell's Kitchen. And
I'm Christine Gorman. I'm a former everything, former health journalist, former president of HKNC-WSNA, current president of the West 55th Street Block Association.
And we want to welcome you to this event at Hartley House. Hartley House next year will be 130 years old. This is our Health Kitchen Community Center. As a settlement house, we provide services to senior citizens, does after-school programs, helps immigrants. That's how it started. So it is going to be renovated, this building, a joint project of Hudson Gill, Clinton Housing, and Hartley House into a senior citizen housing and a community center long term. So if the air conditioner leaks tonight, which it will, that's what's going to be renovated. HKNC, Health Kitchen Neighborhood Coalition, was founded in 2020 during COVID to address public safety. Its constituent members are very long-term health kitchen stakeholders, block associations from West 36 to West 57 streets, community organizations, business improvement districts, the Garment District Alliance, Hudson Yards, Health Kitchen, BID, and other local businesses. These groups have long histories. Many of our block associations in Hell's Kitchen started in the 1970s, and they are still functioning to today. HCC and Wisdom, Housing Conservation Coordinators, has been providing legal services and tenant advocacy since 1973 to the west side of Manhattan. The West Side Neighborhood Alliance, founded in 2005, came out of our major community battle against the West Side Stadium. Remember that, folks? And out of that, it is an independent member-run organization sponsored by HCC, and it mobilizes community residents to take care and to manage community planning. They focus on affordable housing and improved quality of life in Hell's Kitchen. So this congressional forum is our companion to the April 5th forum we did for City Council, and it was very successful. We hope to do the same thing today. We have approximately 65 people who are attending, confirmed, another 60 online today. So, Christine.
So the New York 12th Congressional District includes a wide mishmash from the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side, and all of Midtown. It is the smallest congressional district by area in the United States, but has the most registered Democrats of any election district in New York State. It ranges from Yorkville to Stuyvesant Town on the east side, from Morningside Heights to Union Square on the west side. In our part of town, it includes Hell's Kitchen, Chelsea, the Garment Center, and the Theater District. There was a large field of candidates, but we wanted to have a substantive forum where local issues were addressed. And so in order to do that, we reviewed campaign fundraising in late April and invited the top 4 candidates who had fundraised in New York State. We wanted to make sure that these were people who were supported locally. And we came up with the candidates that you see up here, and they're actually in order: Alex Borres, Micah Lasher, Jack Schlossberg, and Nina Schwalbe. So to tell you a little bit about the format for tonight, each candidate will get 2 minutes to make an opening statement. All candidates will be asked the same questions, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to reply. Our timekeeper is right here, Ryan. So she will We'll give you the 15-second high sign, and she's very good at cutting people off.
Good times out of precinct count.
At the end, there will be a lightning round with one-word answers. The other housekeeping thing is there will be no outbursts. If there are any outbursts, we will escort you from the room. So without, yes, question.
Trust me, you'll know.
Interfering with the, okay. So without further ado, we'll start with opening statements with Mr. Borens.
Press, little screen. Hello. 90 seconds for opening statement.
Oh, 2 minutes.
Oh, it's all about, never mind.
Yes. Thank you for hosting. Thank you all for coming. I'm Alex Boris, 5th generation New Yorker, born, raised, lived nearly my entire life here in New York 12. You have a slew of great candidates on the stage. I just want to talk about 3 things that I think set me apart. The first is my effectiveness in office. I've passed 32 bills in the state legislature, which is about the same amount that Congress as a whole passed in 2023. And the Center for Effective Lawmaking made me the most effective new legislator from New York, something I'm really proud of. I did that by building coalitions. And you see that in the results of this race, where 13 out of the 16 assembly members that have endorsed in this race have endorsed my campaign. Second, when I think about issues that are really differentiated, that Congress is missing the boat, I think about tech and AI. I passed the strongest AI safety bill in the country last year in New York, and I have a master's degree in computer science. I'm the first Democrat elected in New York at any level with that degree. I'd be only the second Democrat in Congress with that degree. A fact I find 10% cool and 90% horrifying. And Time Magazine named me one of the 100 most influential people in the world in artificial intelligence, a list that only impressed my grandma when she found out that the Pope was also on that list. But I want to use that knowledge and influence to fight for you. Third, as Donald Trump loses his grip on power, he is going to get nastier and meaner. And I know that because in a very small way, it is happening to me. Who here has gotten a text or a mailer or a TV ad with a darkened image of me? Yeah. That is coming from 3 Trump mega donors that think there should be no regulation on AI whatsoever. And I got Trump to issue an executive order punishing states for regulating AI. It targeted my bill, the RAISE Act, along with bills throughout the country. But mine was the only one that's been enacted into law since that executive order came into effect. And having someone in office that doesn't just talk about beating Donald Trump or write about beating Donald Trump, but has actually gone toe-to-toe in a legislative fight and won, that's terrifying to his mega donors. Thanks for having me.
Good evening, and thank you all so much for being here. I'm Micah Lasher, also a born and raised New Yorker, very proud parent of 3 kids being raised here. Former, unfortunately, resident of Hell's Kitchen, 56th between 8th and 9th. I served on CB4 with Joe Restuccia, longer ago than either of us would care to admit, I think. And I'm running for Congress because I still believe in the power of government to improve people's lives. It's an idea that's under enormous strain today, and it's an idea that has guided me throughout my entire career. As an aide to Congressman Nadler, as a top aide to Mayor Bloomberg, as chief of staff in the state attorney general's office, as policy director for the governor of this state, I have taken on powerful interests and gotten big things done for the people of this state. From strengthening our abortion laws after the Supreme Court's disastrous Dobbs decision, making our gun laws some of the strongest in the nation, doubling access to child care assistance in the state of New York, passing the largest affordable housing capital plan in the state's history. And in the Assembly, I've been the legislature's leader, fighting back administration, this fascist in the White House, from taking on ICE. Just last week in the budget, we passed 2 proposals that I introduced to protect our neighbors from warrantless arrests in schools and houses of worship, healthcare facilities by rogue ICE agents, and to enable New Yorkers to hold ICE agents accountable in a court of law for the deprivation of civil liberties. Taking on RFK Jr. over vaccine access, fighting fire with fire on redistricting. In Congress, I will push the Democratic Party to be a more effective fighting force against this reactionary regime and refocus on the economic concerns that Americans are facing, because that is how we will rebuild faith in the Democratic Party, rebuild faith in our government, and rebuild our democracy. Thank you so very much.
Hi, Jack Schlossberg. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy days to be here and listen to all of us tonight. I live in Chelsea. I'm born and raised in New York. My family's lived here forever. This is the place that taught me the lessons of life, like right and wrong. Riding the school bus to school every day on the M79. I was born and raised here, and I think the district should have a voice that can be heard loud and clear in Washington. Our campaign slogan is "Believe in Something Again." I think this country, this city and district in particular, was built by generations who believed in America, who sacrificed the greater good so that we could live in the amazing city and country that we call home now. Right now, I can't believe in anything our government is doing. I can't believe in anything that comes out of the president's mouth. We're at war. We don't have any idea what's going on. And I can't believe that this district could elect a congressperson who is backed by Republican billionaires running their campaign. Our campaign is really different than the other campaigns, and I'm a different kind of candidate. I don't come with the same experience as the others, but what I do come with is new perspective, new ideas, and fresh take on what's going on in our country. Because I think, based on the conversations I have with people, that the Democratic Party is doing enough to fight Trump. I don't think that we're doing enough on affordability, on rent, on groceries. And I don't think that we're bringing new people into the party and making ourselves more persuasive. I've demonstrated an ability to do that myself. In the 2024 campaign, I went and traveled to, campaigned in every single swing state across this country and rallied thousands of young people to the cause of the Democratic Party by speaking their language, meeting them where they are, and giving them a reason to vote. And I think we need that kind of energy now more than ever before, because we're up against a real challenge here. Our party has no power. We need to do things differently. And I think that the way to do that is to elect a new kind of candidate from a new generation who has new ideas. Thank you all again so much, and it's great to be with you.
Thank you, everyone, and happy Pride Month, yay. My name is Nina Schwalbe, and I'm running for Congress because we are in deep trouble. From abortion to vaccines, from science to SNAP, to rule of law, we're losing our democracy and we're losing the systems that keep us safe. Ebola, hantavirus, measles outbreaks in over 30 states. And in public health, when we have measles outbreaks, it's a sign that our basic systems are failing. And I've spent my career fixing these types of systems. I'm a public health expert. I've delivered billions of vaccines. I've worked in over 100 countries. I've negotiated with Russia, China, and North Korea. I've negotiated and stood up to big pharma and lowered the cost of cervical cancer vaccines by 65%. I faced death threats for this work, and I did it anyway. I'm a sixth-generation New Yorker. I'm a lesbian, and I'm a mom. I've worked with prisoners and presidents. I've worked in war zones and refugee camps. And I don't fight by screaming or waving my hands. I fight steady and strategic, and we win. A year ago, or a year and a half ago, Trump fired 200,000 of my peers, gutted life-saving rights and programs, and millions of people here and across the world lost access to care. I saw the writing on the wall, and Congress was doing nothing. And that's when I decided to run. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not by a billionaire. I'm not a legacy Democrat. I bring a lifetime of public service and deep expertise. I'm a scientist, I'm a fighter, and I'm a mom, and Washington does not know what's coming. Thank you.
So you've all got me beat on time in New York. It's only my 47th year. Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Kitchen is a historic immigrant community, both external and internal, including Irish, Italian, Greek, Puerto Rican, and Latin American immigrants. It's historically housed performing artists, dancers, musicians. And lastly, Hell's Kitchen is home to LGBT New Yorkers. All these groups have side by side, packed and walk up tenements, right? And they got along, right? These buildings were in poor condition, but in the past 30 years, many of these tenements have been renovated, bringing higher rents and displacement. Despite the odds, the neighborhood persists. Many generations of immigrants still live side by side and block by block with wealthier newcomers. Our community has preserved itself through special district zoning, renovation of construction and affordable housing, and ensuring new development always contains or produces affordable housing. Immigrants today in our neighborhood are under attack and afraid to go to work, to school, to seek healthcare and public benefits. In our neighborhood, organizations such as Hands Off Hell's Kitchen, Chelsea Neighbors United, Rise and Resist continue to advocate for immigrant rights. DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen has confirmed ICE will be deployed throughout the World Cup in New York City. Not just the stadium, but across our streets, neighborhoods, starting in a week. How will you protect our neighbors in Hell's Kitchen in New York City from the tactics of ICE and DHS that they deployed in Chicago and Minneapolis?
90 seconds.
Thank you, sir.
I would abolish, dismantle, and prosecute ICE. And I think it's important to be on the record on that. I'm proud to have been the first in this race to call for it. The night that Renee Good was killed by US agents, by armed agents, I spoke in Foley Square and I said, the responsibility doesn't stop at the agent who pulled the trigger, that Donald Trump's hand was on that gun and Kristi Noem's hand was on that gun. In Congress, we need to hold everyone accountable. It's not just about the votes to dismantle ICE. And Trump, to be clear, doesn't care. He thinks he'll be able to skate by, but he can't do his thuggery alone. It depends on everyone around him also complying. When we control the majority, we will be not just impeaching Trump, but investigating, holding them, issuing subpoenas, holding them in investigation, making it clear that everyone around him can be held accountable. Everyone around him will be facing prosecution. And if they are then taking illegal action, they know that they will be held accountable. And that's how you start to change the behavior, because it's not just him, it's the entire federal government that is working together. And to be clear, what we have right now in ICE is armed thugs sent into our street to just harass our peaceful neighbors. It has no role in America. It has no role in a civilized society.
The day after ICE agents assassinated Alex Preddy on the streets of Minneapolis, I got on a plane to go there because I wanted to stand in solidarity with the people of Minneapolis. I wanted to see firsthand what was going on the ground, and what I saw shook me to my core. I saw an American city under occupation by our own government. I saw huge numbers of residents of that city afraid to leave their homes. Everyone knew someone who had their door banged on by agents, had their car pulled over, or who had been taken away. And the result was an enormous chilling effect on the activity of that city. Now, the people of Minneapolis responded in inspiring ways. Mutual aid networks, ICE observation patrols, while in protests and ICE observation patrols. And I was inspired by the response to the people there, because what they understood was that if the Trump administration was pushed out of Minneapolis, it was that much less likely that they would come to a city like New York. They were fighting our fight. And so I absolutely believe that we must abolish ICE. I absolutely believe that we must prosecute every single person who is responsible for this reign of terror. And we as New Yorkers, we need to come together to protect our neighbors through legislative action, like the bills that I spoke about earlier that I've been proud to pass, and through collective action to make sure that all of our neighbors are protected from our own government, and make sure that it can never happen again.
Monday, I presented the Profiles in Courage Award to 4 different citizens from the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, who each of them, an imam, a mom, a school community organizer, and another member of the community, each of them who rose together up to push ICE out of their city, to bring people who have been kicked out of detention centers in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, stood watch and made sure that they got to have a ride home. We need to abolish ICE. I believe we all agree on that. But we can't set our sights so low. We have to replace ICE with another federal organization that is bound by the rule of law, that is accountable to the public, and that abides by the constitutional rights of due process and the right to privacy. We also need to remember that the problem that we're trying to face is how to fix our broken immigration system. We need nothing less than comprehensive immigration reform. That means providing a pathway to citizenship for people who are living here, undocumented people, bringing them out of the shadows. And we also need to elect people who put their money where their mouth is. I think it's important to remember that the people backing different people in this race are going to have influence over who their representative is. And the fact is that when they say something about abolishing ICE, you can believe it. It's worth noting Mr. Borres has $3.5 million from an individual who is currently backing MAGA Republican candidates, one of whom believes that all ICE agents should receive the Medal of Freedom. Thank you.
I think my favorite statement about ICE in New York is, in New York, ICE or coffee. I also agree full. I've run a major program, a $7 billion program at USAID, and when a government department is dysfunctional, just like if you work in a business, you got to fire the guys. And this is a mass killing force that we've given free rein. I think one of the things that we don't pay enough attention to is that this started a lot earlier than this Trump administration. And I work with people who visited children detention centers, which were run in the past administration. The Biden administration actually just did not do enough about this issue. We could have reformed ICE even at that point. Instead of investing in ICE, we need humane pathways to immigration. And what that means, pretty simple: more judges, more translators, social services for people who are on the immigration pathway. We also need to reopen our embassies. We have over 100 embassies around the world with no ambassadors. And that should be the first point of contact for people when they're leaving their country. Trump has really gone too far. Well, that's a bit of an obvious statement, but he's not only arresting now people without documentation, but he's also arresting people with that documentation. And I just want to shout out to our brothers and sisters who are doing work in New Jersey right now at the Delaney Detention Center. You know, that is a human rights abuse in our neighborhood. Thank you.
We're going to come back to the big issues in a second. We're going to get local for a moment, all right? So, public safety and concentration of social services. In 2025, Midtown South Precinct led the city in felony arrests. Imagine felony narcotic arrests. Imagine that. There are 15 social service locations in the 8th Avenue corridor from 4 to West 45th, a clear over-concentration. While many locations are well managed, others are not. For example, currently the Times Square Hotel was a paradigm of success. It is not, no longer. West Midtown Medical Group, that's a methadone clinic. They become hotspots for narcotics arrests and assaults. What specific actions will you take to reduce crime and restore public safety and the quality of life along this 8th Avenue corridor, which is adjacent to thousands and thousands who live there?
Thank you for the question. I think the job of a member of Congress, much like the job of a member of the New York State Assembly, when it comes to public safety, is to be focused like a laser on local conditions and local issues. And I have been very proud as a member of the State Assembly, I represented on the Upper West Side, to work hand in glove with local residents, our local precinct, the district attorney's office, and the relevant state and city agencies to deal with hotspots not unlike what Hell's Kitchen is experiencing. And it takes persistence, it takes focus, it takes a constructive approach to say to PD, to say to the DA's office, how do we make sure that it's not just about taking a couple of guys off the corner because they're going to be back the next week. How do we make sure that people get the help they need? How do we make sure that if there's a facility that is not doing what they should be doing, to make sure that the surroundings of that facility are well maintained, that they get the resources and that they are held accountable for looking out for the community. This is not a magic bullet sort of thing. It takes persistence. I believe that when you're trying to corral city agencies, social service providers. Sometimes you need to have them hook every week until the problem gets solved. I had a colleague who once said that's Micah's death by daily meeting approach. But that's what it takes. And and Hell's Kitchen, I should say, is it's a progressive community that believes in providing these services, but that shouldn't mean that it bears a disproportionate share of collateral effects.
Thank you. I grew up here and I'm the first to admit that the conditions of the city have changed, especially following COVID. We all know that. As I see the job of a representative in Congress, it is to do two things. It is to pass laws that help the city and the nation, and it's also to win federal dollars for your district. One way that federal dollars get to some of the questions that we're answering right now about public safety and health and safety in the city is through something called the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG. That is a program that provides funds for the cities that can then spend as it sees fit on the problems facing the city. And I think local input is the most important when thinking about how to spend federal dollars. I think I'm someone to Washington and advocate, make sure our voices are heard loud and clear in Washington and get more federal dollars for those programs. I also think this is an all-out effort that we need to have to help reduce crime and increase public safety in the city. That means funding social services programs like fully funded Medicaid and SNAP programs that the Trump administration has cut and decimated. It means making sure that everybody has health care. It means making sure that we find creative ways like my plan to have Donald Trump pay for the cost of the perimeter around his buildings here in the district and invest that money in public safety in the form of paying cops more overtime. So it's going to take nothing less than an all-out approach and a representative in Congress who's willing to bring the energy and new ideas to get the job done.
This is a tough issue, and I've stood outside Manhattan Plaza this weekend, and I spoke to a lot of businesses on 9th Avenue, and I think something I've learned is that, I mean, this really is more of an issue for this neighborhood than for a lot of other neighborhoods in the district. I spent a lot of time in my career working on harm reduction services, and in fact, helped the Russian Federation legalize harm reduction services. The Trump administration is rolling back all the things that we know are there to help people who are in need. 40,000 people this week are going to lose their SNAP benefits. There's some new rules for SAMHSA, which say that basically if you've ever provided harm reduction services, you won't be eligible for money. And the approach that I would like to entertain with you, or maybe that's the wrong verb, is just work with you block by block, because I don't think you can throw this is probably a terrible analogy. Can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but to say that I want to learn from you service by service, what's working and what's not, and figure out what the fix is. Some of these are city facilities. Some of these do get HUD funding. Some of these do get SAMHSA funding. So my role as your congressperson, when it gets federal funding, is to figure out how to work with that service and your community to make that facility more responsible and do its job. And that could be bad management or it could be money, but the devil is in the detail on each of these. And a big thank you to the community. The community is willing to accept and provide for your neighbors. Thank you.
My grandfather was a cop on the East Side, and back then he walked his beat and he knew everyone in the neighborhood. He knew the people who, they didn't call it substance use disorder at the time, but were suffering. He knew the business and moved away from that nature of policing or even having community engagement. There are grants at the federal level to help provide those services, either through police departments or through something like the Department of Community Safety. I've been happy in my assembly office. I've been proud to sponsor a program from Midtown Community Justice Center to do outreach, to bring people in to get access to services, because we know that many of the problems are caused by just a few individuals that we haven't figured out how to actually get them the help that they need. And funding for those services is critical, engaging not just block by block, but even person by person to get to real solutions for everyone. And of course, we also need to dive into the source of many of these problems, which is the rising addiction that we have. And 80% of people who are addicted to heroin first started with an opioid prescription. 80%. Now it's moved on to fentanyl, obviously. We also have stimulants, rising. One of the things I fought for in the assembly is contingency management as a program that Medicaid can fund to actually reduce the problems that are coming from stimulants. We need real science-based solutions here, along with the shoe leather of walking block by block. My commitment to you is that I will do both.
We will get to a question about money in politics, and Alex, then you can reply to the allegation that was made then. But the next question is on social services and mental health. Here in Hell's Kitchen, we see people on the street suffering from severe mental illness. They are not being cared for, nor are they able to care for themselves. Unfortunately, their illnesses sometimes become a public safety risk for other New Yorkers. This is a two-part question, which will with Mr. Schlossberg. Involuntary hospitalization as a last resort is one option that can be used both to protect these individuals and residents. What is your position on this approach? That's the first part. And then the second part is what else can be done to address this issue?
I would say that I am not for involuntary admission. I do think that we need to do everything we can to provide people the help in the form of social services and community support for those who are struggling with addiction, with mental health, because it does have a real effect on our city. As I said before, there are federal hooks to funding and resources to combat this problem in New York. And a part of that is working closely with local government, with the mayor, with state government, which is something that I'd be more than happy and prepared to do. I also think that we need somebody to be a champion for mental health on a federal level and reverse some of the cuts that have been made in the big beautiful bill to mental health services, and have somebody advocate for increased funding for mental health programs here in the city and across the country. There's so much that we need to do. And again, it really does relate back to not just the addiction problem, but also affordability crisis here in the city. People are struggling to afford to live in New York, whether their rents are higher than they ever have been, groceries cost more than ever, food costs more than ever, and we need to do everything we can to lower that economic stress on folks. A lot of times that is what results in people being forced to make difficult choices and who can't bear the burden. I've got a plan to help New Yorkers with their rent save money by deducting your rent from your taxes, by making the child tax credit pay monthly, not annually, and by making HIV medication free at the point of care, all of which will ease economic stress and hopefully contribute to a more productive public safety government. Thank you.
Christine, your question is difficult. We have a crap mental health system in this country and also in this city, and we don't distinguish between different types of mental health needs. So the needs of a schizophrenic is quite different from the needs of somebody who's withdrawing from a heroin addiction or an up from heroin. This all starts with primary prevention. And what that means is giving people access to basic services, both social services and healthcare services. And what we need to do on that, and my plan on that is, first of all, to lower the cost of drugs so that people who need like schizophrenic medicines can have access to them without it being a bankrupting event. Increase community health services. We have these incredibly amazing federally qualified community healthcare centers, which provide mental health services. If they were only funded more, we have Ryan Health, we have a bunch of them around the city, and they are the first point of contact for people who need any sort of mental health and should be. We have all these amazing models on community mental health services that are, even the Hudson Guild, we have some in your community that are incredible, and those need to be funded and expanded. And then we need to make sure that everybody has access to Medicare, Medicaid, and affordable care. We cannot assume that everybody with mental health has the same issue, and we have to treat people as people and get them the care that they need. And a lot of times in the city, I hear people talk about, the mental health crisis, but it's different. It's different depending on the people.
Every jurisdiction has some level of involuntary hospitalization. The question is under what standards and who gets to make that determination. That's fundamentally the question. And recently in New York State, we changed the standards because it was just looking at whether someone was an imminent threat to others and made it easier to assert when they were an imminent threat to themselves. And it is not compassionate to leave someone who is struggling, who could benefit from care, out on the streets when there's something that is treatable. And there's a long history of government abusing this. And so you need to be careful and you need to aggressively invest in the education and in the standards of everyone that you empower to make that decision. But if your alternative is letting people who clearly need treatment and clearly need help sit there, you're not fulfilling your promise to them or to anyone in society. And it's important that we take that into account. Now, one of the things that we miss is when we make a difficult decision to bring someone into hospitalization, do we keep them there long enough to actually stabilize them? We've all seen people out on the streets still with a hospital plan. That's because Medicaid reimburses a higher rate for short-term stays, lower rate for long-term stays. And so hospitals kick people out before they're fully stable. That's the thing we need to fix and change so that we don't have people coming in and out and we can actually give them the healthcare they need.
The pandemic laid bare the shame that is our mental health care system in this state and in this country. When I became policy director for Governor Hochul in 2022, we set about to reinvest in mental health care in New York. I crafted $1 billion plan to create new inpatient psychiatric beds, fund outpatient services, supportive housing, access to counseling, care, and all this. Just to put into context, we had seen a 20% drop in inpatient psychiatric beds in the decade before the pandemic as acute mental illness was slipping. And it's to the great shame as our state and our country that we are digging out of this hole. Involuntary hospitalization is a tool that is necessary to make sure that people in the most serious circumstances get the care that they need. And I was proud to be involved in adjusting the law to match the constitutional guardrails while making it possible to use that tool. I introduced legislation, for example, to allow psychiatric nurse practitioners to do the evaluations for involuntary hospitalization, a common sense thing to do to make that tool usable. But anybody who says that involuntary hospitalization is going to be enough to solve our mental health care problem is not being honest. We don't have nearly enough beds. We don't have nearly enough supportive housing. We don't have nearly enough psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, social workers. We need massively more investment at the federal level, state level. I will fight for that investment, just as I will craft the $1 billion plan at the state level to reinvest.
I'm going to turn to affordable housing and balancing community preservation and housing development. Building more housing, both market rate and affordable, is key. We all support building more housing. Our community board has an affordable housing plan. And between 2015 and 2025, Hell's Kitchen produced over 13,000 market rate apartments and 2,749 affordable apartments. And in 2026, we have another 813 affordable apartments in the final stages of approval. We did not accomplish through slogans or simplistic ideas, period. What specific strategies would you prioritize to strengthen housing affordability in New York while balancing tenant protections, responsible development, and community input? That's Nina.
Affordable housing is something. When I talk to people on the street, and I've spoken to now over upwards of 2,000 healthcare housing, housing is a #1 concern of New Yorkers. We have a lot of programs and we're not getting federal dollars. I simply don't understand about our current representation. Our federal dollars, which we pay our taxes and should be coming back to New Yorkers for our housing programs. That's Section 9. It's a little bit of Section 8, but let's just focus on Section 9 and public housing. We know that we need repairs. We know that some of these buildings are in terrible conditions. We know that the answer is not only knock them down and build again. We did that with Robert Moses, and it wasn't a perfect plan. Oh, sorry, I don't know if that was I think we need, I don't think, we need a public housing authority. Housing is a public good. It's a public good. Everybody should have access to housing, and it is a right for us as citizens. We need a better voucher program for people that are struggling. There is a federal voucher program to help people supplement their housing income so that they can afford their rents. And that's not happening. We have a huge backlog. And we have landlords not accepting these vouchers. And finally, we have this warehousing issue where we know that landlords are holding on to perfectly fine apartments because they're waiting for the governor or whoever to let them raise the rent. So there is stock that we're not using, and there is stock that we can improve if we change our views and look at housing as a human right.
I was born and raised in New York on 2 middle-class salaries. I'm now raising my family with a 9-month-old son. And things are getting so hard for families like ours. The cost of housing is eating up so much of people's budget, and it's not being treated as the emergency that it truly is. And all levels of government need to be involved. The specific mechanisms of the federal government, they already issue private activity bonds, which are federal exempt bonds that states use to build affordable housing. New York uses our allocation every year. Most of the country doesn't. Congress has allocated that money to go out. We should have the right to use it in New York to build the affordable housing that we need here. We also can adjust the AMI threshold, the way you calculate what is actually affordable, which we all know is not actually affordable in New York. That's because it's a separate HUD formula, a more expensive one. There's no justification for that. We can change it at the federal level so that when you get a tax break to build affordable housing here, we can all actually afford to live there. We can finally actually repair public housing. The public housing authority would be fantastic and part of HUD, but we need to make sure the public housing that we have is working. There's a $78 billion capital deficit in NYCHA. That can only be met by the federal government. We need to repeal the Faircloth Amendment, which bans the federal government from investing in new public housing and let them issue bonds. We need to treat this like emergency on deck, both build housing and to preserve what we have.
You know, I learned a lot about this issue working with Joe and others on CB4. I saw a community that said we are interested in building housing. We just want to maintain the socioeconomic diversity and vibrancy that makes this community so special. And I think when you look at places like Penn South and you look at places like Manhattan Plaza, they are shining examples of the power of the federal government to create that socioeconomic diversity that makes our city what it is. And fundamentally, we need to get the federal government back into that business. And it's not because it's been an assault by the Republican Party for decades. The Faircloth Amendment is an amendment that prohibits the federal government from investing in public housing. The Democratic Party hasn't made it a priority either. I wish this was on the Republicans. So we need to regain the ingenuity that gave us Mitchell-Lama and limited income cooperatives. I was proud to enact the first public revolving loan fund for mixed income housing at the state level. We need to do a similar kind of thing at the federal level. We need to dramatically increase investment in public housing, and we need new programs to build middle income housing, truly middle income housing. The median rent in Manhattan just crossed $5,000 a month. We have a 1.4% vacancy rate in this city, basically means no housing. The federal government has a big role to play in tackling these issues.
I'm not a fan of President Trump, but he has shown me that anything is possible if you declare it is possible and set your mind to it. And that's why I think we really need somebody in Congress who is a champion for Section 9 public housing. And that's exactly what I intend to be. That's why I met with so many of the tenants who live in the Chelsea, Elliott, and Fulton houses, heard them out, and came out strongly against the demolition. I think that we are far too ready to cave to private real estate developers and their terms of the deal instead of investing in true public housing. And no less is what is required here in this district to make, as everyone has said, housing prices are going up. We need to do something about this. We need to make sure that residents of Manhattan Plaza aren't relying on a handshake from a private developer just for the about how their income is going to be going forward, and maybe they'll get kicked out of their house. We need to get real guarantees, and we need to really invest in Section 9 and in the repairs that this community needs. I have come out with a housing plan that has 3 pillars: one for renters, deduct your rent from your taxes. This would save people thousands of dollars a year on rent. It would also make sure that renters are treated on the same level as homeowners who currently borrow against their home and deduct the mortgage interest payment from their taxes. I also have a plan specifically to address the NYCHA backlog in repairs. We need to form what I call the Fix It Now caucus to make sure exclusively devote our energies to the backlog in repairs in municipal public housing authorities across this country. Thank you.
So we're going to stay on this subject, and specifically, the West Side Neighborhood Alliance, which you would not think, is very interested in Chelsea NYCHA. So Chelsea NYCHA demolition. In 2020, there was an overall community plan to renovate and preserve Chelsea NYCHA building through the PACT program, worked from Section 9 to Section 8. In 2021, the related companies was chosen as developer. That plan was changed to demolish and replace the existing 2,056 apartments with 6 buildings, and they had 3,454 apartments in 15 buildings. Those with 2,418 market rate apartments and 1,064 affordable apartments. We have no idea what those affordable apartments will be, AMI, van, nothing. During the past 5 years, this plan has been the subject of division and disagreement within the NYCHA tenant body and throughout the Chelsea community. The proposed plan is now supported by the new mayoral administration and its court actions. At the same time, NYCHA is currently has or renovating 28,580 apartments across the city through the PACT program. Yet here in our neighborhood of Chelsea, this proposed plan is the only one in the entire city for entire demolition of public housing, setting a serious precedent. What solution do you support to bring all the parties together to agree on how to proceed?
I have serious concerns with the current plan, not because the idea of building new housing and getting private dollars in order to get affordable housing is bad. It could be, but I have serious concerns about the plan because it has to be led by the rest. We are talking, when you're talking about public housing, of people that have the least economic power, the least political power. And to tear down their homes, you should be sure that they are in support of it, that they have voted for it. Now, there was a vote taken here after Related had taken a number of people out to dinners and organized their supporters and found the people that they could and made sure that they turned out. 26% turnout for people's homes. And it won 57 to 43. But when you have 26% turnout in those conditions, I have serious questions about it. And when I asked, would you do a snap election right now? Like, do you believe you still have the resident support? No. And when you look at how Chelsea has voted in the recent city council election, there was huge support before a candidate right here, Leila Gisco, who's was talking about she opposed the demolition. And so all evidence points to the residents not being in support of this proposal. That's an important thing to get right. So if they support it, great. But I don't think there's evidence of that. And meanwhile, your member of Congress should be fighting for every single dollar from the federal government to make repairs, should be proposing innovative things like letting NYCHA issue bonds backed by the federal government to do repairs, and putting everything forward to get resources to improve this for everyone.
I think it's important to acknowledge where we are. NYCHA is one of the worst managed government bureaucracies known to history. We have it faces a $8 billion capital hole as a result of decades of neglect by the federal government. By the way, I should say, not for lack of advocacy by New York City members of Congress like Velasquez. There's a $300 million operating deficit that NYCHA faces today, not for lack of support from those of us in the state legislature who have provided funds that should be coming from the federal government year after year. And the process by which we've gotten to this point in Chelsea is no one's idea of clear or transparent. But the honest truth is, at this point, there isn't a viable alternative plan that is on the table to provide the residents with housing that is not crumbling before our eyes. I would love to say that there is, and I don't think you'll hear from anyone on this stage a concrete proposal other than we're going to go fight for funding, which I absolutely will. And what I will also do is fight to make sure that any plan that goes forward is transparent, tenants' rights are protected, and promises that are made by NYCHA or any private partner are enforced and kept. But I'm also going to tell you the truth every single day.
I certainly agree with everybody who thinks that we need to build more housing here in New York. I think you'd be crazy not to think that we do. The question is, are we going to take some of the only public housing in the city and convert it into not public housing? And that's why I oppose the demolition and the planned conversion of the Elliott, Chelsea, Fulton houses from Section 9 to Section 8. I think we need to fully invest in Section 9 public housing. And I oppose the demolition because I met with people who live in these buildings and I heard their stories. Many of them were seniors. Many of them, English is their second language. And they told me about a suspect vote that not everybody had voted on. They told me that their living conditions are not as described. And I went and saw them myself. I went into the buildings. I saw the quote unquote decrepit infrastructure there. And that is not what I encountered myself. I think that we need to have somebody who's willing to go toe to toe with private developers to stick up on behalf of the community in New York 12. And that is exactly what I want to do. I want to fight for funding, but I also want to make sure it is targeted, that we make our commitment to fixing the backlog in repairs. It takes a year on average or more for a repair request in NYCHA to be met. I think that we can do better than that. And I think we need to turn up the pressure. And I'm proud to stand with the residents of Elliott, Chelsea, and Fulton houses in opposing the demolition, which the vast majority of them do.
It's funny that money is always used an excuse when you don't want to do things. But when you want to have like some war in Iran that nobody even said you could have, then you have as much money as you need. So I don't think money is ever the problem. I think it's actually political will. And I don't think we've had the political will that we need to focus on public housing. My three colleagues, friends, guys to the right, they're all supported by the abundance. They've all been endorsed by the abundance movement, which for me, I don't believe in any new housing at all costs. I believe we should be investing in public housing. There are projects all over the city which have 80-20, which want to do 80-20, 80 private, 20 public. You know I live in, for any of us that live in a building that was converted, I live in a building uptown called Park West Village, which started as public housing. It's kind of like Stuytown or Peter Cooper. And now it's private, and it doesn't have any diversity except for the people, the few residents that are still there under rent control. I support Chelsea, Elliott, Fulton. I think it was again, they did it. How could they have done a worse job with that project from a community perspective? They had a vote that the residents know was a vote. Was it even a vote? They chose a terrible developer that pretty much everybody in the city hates. And so like, it was just a super badly managed project. And I am watching closely to see what the court says. You know, we're waiting for a court decision. And then I think we got to come together again and have a plan. And one thing I will promise as your congressperson is that there is nothing I will do without consulting with the residents and the community board and the block associations before I move forward with any plan. Thank you.
Hell's Kitchen, we're going now to city and state infrastructure. Hell's Kitchen is ground zero for major infrastructure projects. The Gateway Tunnel, Penn Station redevelopment, the new Port Authority bus terminal, the new passenger ship terminal. The total estimate for all of these infrastructure projects is above $22.6 billion. That's a lot. We in Hell's Kitchen support these developments to replace or vastly improve city infrastructure. However, we are living through a once-in-a-lifetime degree of major construction. What policies or actions will you take to coordinate these public projects to ensure basic quality of life for neighborhood residents through the next 10 to 15 years of ongoing construction, and to make sure that we don't get jerked around on federal funding?
We need a locally led coordination process with residents and local representatives at the table, period, full stop. We cannot, thank you. We are being at Penn Station, in which Donald Trump is literally having cronies and donors and financial associates come into his court as he picks who will be assigned the role of building his latest castle, is absolutely unacceptable. I was proud to stand with Jerry Nadler in protest of that closed door process. And so I will fight for a state and city run community coordination to manage the quality of life impacts in this neighborhood. And I'll also fight to fix a fundamentally unfair and broken process of funding transportation infrastructure at the federal level. Did you know that general transportation infrastructure funds have to be spent 80% for roads and bridges, 20% for transit? So in a city like New York, where our lifeblood is transit, the fundamental way we fund infrastructure in this country is stacked against us. And to make matters worse, New York City has 50% of the nation's transit riders, and we get 15% of the nation's transit funding. That is fundamentally unjust. It will be a top priority of mine to fight to fix those unfair formulas.
As you said, this is some of the largest infrastructure projects the government is taking on. I want to make sure that these projects are not funded behind closed doors with sweetheart deals given out to Trump's buddies in real estate. I think we need to have a transparent process in construction and the rest, especially when it comes to Penn Station, because I don't want President Trump's name on the top of that building. I think we can do better than that. I also want to make sure that we do not proceed without real community input. And in my mind, the southern expansion is something that is going to directly adversely affect this community. I think we need to focus more on the Penn Station renovation project on through running and less on the southern expansion renovation. I think we also need to make sure that we elect somebody who can go to Congress and fight back and fight fire with fire and stand up to a president who's going to withhold funding for critical infrastructure projects in this city. And I think I can do that. Our campaign was asked about in the first day of our campaign, it was asked about in the White House briefing room. I want to take that voice and that platform to stand up for the federal infrastructure project dollars that we need here in New York 12, because the city should not be paying for all of this ourselves. We need the federal government support.
When I was taken on a tour of the Penn Station potential renovation, we had a journalist who works for AM/PM take us around and explain that that is the most complicated project I've ever seen. It is crazy. And there's so many questions about every single aspect of that project. And, you know, the only thing I could think of when I left was this is the biggest project in my lifetime, biggest public infrastructure project in our lifetimes, that with the Gateway. There have been so many issues that have been raised by this community. One is, how is your daily quality of life going to be affected by this massive project? How many jobs is this going to create? What's this going to do for traffic? There are a million questions, and our government has to answer those questions. And one of the things that federal government does incredibly badly is it passes laws. Well, maybe that's good or bad, but it doesn't follow the dollars when they go down. So when we get to those projects, they need to have performance indicators and be held accountable to those indicators. That means timelines, that means community engagement, a whole series of process indicators so that that project is serving the needs of this community and can be reported back. And that means there can't be, what did somebody call it? Forever scaffolding. Forever scaffolding, or, you know, people have to meet the timelines. And the other part of that is community scorecards. This is something that's been done all over the world. where communities get to rate in real time how the services and how the federal government is serving their projects. So KPIs and community scorecards are how we're going to hold the federal government accountable. Now,
these are complicated projects and they require the focus of your Congress member to fight for. And I've said from the start, the committee that I'm going to be asking for is the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, because this district is the transportation hub for the Northeast. And we're proud to have these projects. We're proud to have that benefit us, but it has to actually benefit us. It can't be at the expense of the people who are living here. And so when Donald Trump threatens the Gateway project and then turns it back on, and then threatens it and then turns it back on, that doesn't just prolong the projects, it doesn't just prolong the scaffolding, it also raises the costs because the contractors can't plan. We can't actually just finish a project. So you need a Congress member that can be focused on making sure all those dollars come through on time, that there isn't the start and stop of the Trump administration, that you look at innovative procedures like design build or other ways that can shorten the number of revisions that need to happen, that lengthen out all of these projects, that engages deeply with the community from the start and tells the entire story instead of hiding behind presentations that don't give anything and leave you to guess, and is always advocating for you to make sure we get to the end. This is what I have done in my time in the Assembly, and it's why every building trades union that is endorsed in this race, all 6, has endorsed me. I'm the one that they trust to actually bring the dollars to the district and to complete these projects, not just for their jobs, but for all of you.
We're going to move back to national issues and affordable healthcare. The need for affordable and accessible healthcare, including primary care, prenatal care, dental care, persists. 50 hospitals have closed in our state since 1996, of which a third were located in New York City. The ability to obtain timely primary care special appointments are difficult at best, even with insurance. As a member of Congress, do you support Medicare for all? And if so, how would you like to see it implemented? Jack.
Yes, I strongly support Medicare for all. I think the only way to reduce the overburdening costs in our medical system is a single payer system. And I'm proud to say that I strongly support Medicare for all. But there's a lot that we can do in the meantime. The original mandate of the Affordable Care Act was to provide a public option. That is a public option for government-run health insurance. And I think that that is an excellent glide path toward a Medicare for all style system. But we can do more. We can add vision and dental and hearing to government-controlled plans, the Affordable Care Act, to make sure that they are covered under the Affordable Care Act. We can expand the government's power to negotiate drug prices. We can extend the Affordable Care Act's subsidies to make sure that they don't run out and leave people high and dry. But we also need to make sure that we restore the Medicaid funding cuts that are adversely affecting so many people in this district. We need an all-out approach to healthcare and hold health insurance companies responsible for jacking up prices, because in this country, we have the most expensive hospital bills, and yet we still have mediocre outcomes. We need to make sure that we hold pharma companies accountable, health insurance companies accountable, and make sure that we make affordable healthcare a reality for everybody in America, especially in New York 12.
I put forward as one of my plans something I called the American Health Security Act, and then I realized Hillary Clinton had something with the same name, but it was a different plan. So I've just changed the name to Healthy People, Healthy Democracy Act, but the points are the same. And the first is lower drug costs, and that's something I've done. We can have front agreements. We pay $50 billion a year as taxpayers to invest in the production and research around drugs, and then we pay the most expensive prices in the world. We can have upfront conditionalities, expand the way that we do pooled purchasing, like Sam's Club, so that we get better prices on drugs. Second thing that I've talked about already is community health centers. We have a fabulous system of federally qualified community health centers, which serve people with insurance and people without insurance. We need to replicate and expand that, and we can do that super easily, and it's got support of both red and blue states because it provides primary health care to everyone all around the country. And as part of that, particularly in New York City, we also need to fund safety net hospitals because there are people who are going to need to go to the hospitals and need care. And thirdly, we need to protect and expand Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act eventually to a single payer system. And we can do that by lowering inclusion on Medicare kind of 5 years at a time until we get to every. We don't need Medicare for all, we need improved Medicare for all, because for those of us who have family or friends on Medicare, there's a lot better that we can do. And I think we can do this in the United States of America for sure. Thank you.
Healthcare is a human right, and Medicare for All is providing that healthcare to every single American. My mom has multiple sclerosis. Thank God she's doing well. But it's only the health insurance that her job, her union got for her that allowed her to get the care that she needed, that allowed us to stay in New York. That shouldn't be a story of luck. That should be a story that everyone has birthright of being here. And we need to approach this question with the urgency that it so demands. So yes, I would push for Medicare for all on day one. I would co-sponsor it on day one, and I would do absolutely everything I can to get it across the line. Because when you cut out the middlemen, when you cut out the insurance and the pre-approval and the fighting and this and that and the profit of those insurance companies, it actually reduces the costs. All of the models of Medicare for all compared to other companies show that when you take both what your company is paying for insurance and what you are paying, it'd be about half the cost to roll out Medicare for all for everyone. And if we do that, that means we have the funding already for more to do things like vision and dental and hearing, to do things like have Medicare Part B actually pay 100% of your drug costs and not 80% and leave this hole that seniors then need to struggle to get. We can provide this if we have the political will. And sure, there's lots of steps to do. In the meantime, I've been proud to work at the state level to cut costs, but we shouldn't look away from what the ultimate goal is and the urgency of getting there.
My father passed away 5 years ago at the end of a long decline. And there were a lot of challenges during those years, but one of them was not questioning whether he'd be able to get the health care that he needed, the treatment that he needed, the procedures that he needed, because he had Medicare. And that is not the story in America. 45,000 people die every year for not having health insurance. We've got 8%, 23 million Americans who don't have health insurance at all. More than a third of Americans skipped or delayed a necessary appointment because of cost. That's someone not going to get an annual checkup, winding up in the emergency room, someone not getting a stent, winding up with a heart attack. And it is to the shame of this country. And it goes back to the original sin after World War II, when Western democracies across the world were putting in universal healthcare, single payer systems, and we put in a private system that today costs twice the OECD average, $15,000 per capita, and we have a life expectancy nearly 3 years less. The right answer is the answer that we should have put into place 75 years ago. It's Medicare for all. It's universal health care. I'm proud to co-sponsor the New York Health Act, which would create a single payer system at the state level. But the right answer is to do it nationally. I will fight with everything I've got to make that happen.
The next question is on artificial intelligence and its impact on the workplace. And Mina will be the first to answer. A growing number of companies have cited artificial intelligence and automation as reasons for cutting staff. In 25, over 100,000 employees were impacted by AI-driven layoffs. In 2026, nearly 80,000 employees have already been impacted by AI-driven layoffs. Further AI layoff announcements come from non-tech industries like finance, logistics, consulting, media, retail, and manufacturing. There is no legal framework with independent oversight of artificial intelligence. And when the Pope weighs in, you know we're in trouble. What steps do you think Congress should take to implement AI regulatory systems and safeguards to protect workers and livelihoods?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The steps should be urgent and immediately. And I'm so glad, because there's one guy who gets a lot of AI attention and the rest of us never get the question. So I've been working on AI in the area of healthcare for the last decade. I have a Lancet peer review article, BMJ article, which looks at and argues for the need for guidelines and regulations in the field of AI. Thank you. Is that good? Like I'm missing that system. Yeah, and you know, we know in healthcare that AI has been a problem because we've seen the dangerousness of the algorithms. Black and brown people get poor diagnosis. The algorithm isn't followed. They're released over time with no guidance or guidelines to come back and regulate them post factum. So I proposed a plan, and you can read about it in my Substack, based on research that we've done and others have done, which says we really need to look at these models before they're released. Now, President Trump said the same thing today, but I don't fully agree with him because the release and review that he's proposing is by experts that he chooses, not independent experts. So I'm not sure that's going to work out so well. So what we need is an independent commission which reviews these large generative AI models before they're released to the public. We also have a congressional committee which looks at AI because it affects every part of our business. It affects housing, it affects education, it affects healthcare, it affects security. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago at the Council on Foreign Relations where they talked about AI weapons of mass destruction. So this is a congressional priority, and we need a congressional blue ribbon commission, which looks at AI overall. Thank you. And read my Substack.
You go to my website, alexboris.nyc/open framework, you'll find a nice 4-page document with a subject. There's 43 subpoints. I know Democrats in our plans, but this is important. And on labor in particular, you'll find an AI dividend paper that talks about how right now our tax structure incentivizes laying people off in order to go to AI, and you're seeing the results. We put huge taxes on hiring humans. We allow for depreciation in using AI. We need to at least give humans a fighting chance. And my plan does that by getting rid of depreciation on AI and putting a token tax on the commercial usage. There's a lot more in there and a lot more that we have to do. But what's stopping Congress from acting is not just the lack of people like me that actually know the field. It's the incredible amount of money that is being spent to stop anyone in Congress from standing up here. And it's 3 AI billionaires, Ben Horowitz, Mark Andreessen, and Greg Brockman, the president of OpenAI, who have formed a $140 million super PAC to go against anyone that actually tries to regulate AI. And why is that relevant for this race? Well, because they named me their #1 enemy. I am the only one in the country that they are spending against. They have promised to spend $10 million against me and said they wanted to make an example out of me. So this race is not just about who could regulate AI or any of the other issues. It's giving you a chance to look the AI billionaires in the eyes who are saying that you don't get to have a say in this technology and telling them they're wrong.
I will, I'm the parent of teenagers, and I am involved in a constant conversation with my wife and our friends about what jobs are going to be available to our kids in a decade. What are they going to be able to do? I can't tell you how many people I know whose kids did all the right things, studied hard, and are home. Don't know where they fit into this workplace. And so I proposed, hearkening back to the ideas of the New Deal, which were the ideas of New Yorkers like FDR and Francis Perkins, to offer every young American a first job guarantee. We have significant workforce shortages in jobs that need to be done by human beings today and in a decade. Mental health care, education, the trades. We should say to every young American, you want to work in a meaningful job, we will make it happen at a livable wage. Make that a priority of the federal government with a program of paid national service funded by a profoundly more just federal tax structure that reclaims wealth from the very small number of people in whose hands it is being consolidated. That's at the heart of my plan for Congress. We also need robust federal regulation and oversight of AI companies I'm not interested in having that policy be run by any of our big tech oligarchs. I've been standing up to them for more than a decade. I'm not interested in the most evil one of them running it or the slightly less evil one either.
When I talk to people about artificial intelligence meet here in the district, they're worried about jobs, they're worried about kids, and they're worried about AI companies squeezing them for more and more dollars, whether it's price fixing for groceries, for ticket prices, you name it, AI companies are using this technology to squeeze more out of consumers. On the job side, I don't submit to the idea that all of these jobs are just going to be lost and there's nothing that we can do about it. I think AI, if it's going to work, it's got to work for everybody. And we've got to make sure that we have real guarantees to prevent people from, let's say, training a model to do their job before they get laid off. And if they do get laid off, we need to have a federal wage insurance program to provide people with a safety net in the event that they do get laid off because of AI, that they have 6 months to a year, that they're still going to get paid, still going to get their benefits. I also think the public needs to participate in the windfall of profits, both by profit sharing agreements, but also by licensing deals for city and state and local governments for the IP and algorithm technology that AI companies are providing. I also think the most important thing that we've got to do is protect our kids. I don't want another generation of kids to grow up with AI being used in their schools the way AI has, the way that social media has affected children's brains and our social structures for kids, including my niece and nephew, who I look at, and I just hope that they don't get their brains corrupted by AI. Ultimately, I really do think that having a disinterested regulator, someone who is not beholden to AI companies, is among the most important things that we should elect when choosing a representative.
Money in politics. Supreme Court's ruling in Citizens United allowed large corporations through PACs to wield disproportionate political power for unlimited spending to support their chosen political candidates. That ruling gutted parts of the campaign finance reform and unleashed these super PACs, dark money nonprofits, and a flood of undisclosed cash in our elections, corrupting our entire political process. Questions too. Do you accept money from super PACs, corporate PACs, APAC, or major AI technology companies? What approximate amount and percentage are your donations from folks from New York State? 2 separate questions.
Jackson attacked me on this. Should he go first so I can respond?
Absolutely. Well, no, why don't you go first?
Do I get to respond after he attacks me?
Yes.
Okay, cool, great. Cool, sounds good. I do not accept money to my campaign from any PACs other than labor unions, and I actually check and make that happen, unlike others on this stage. I have raised my money from individuals. I've raised first or second most from New York and from the district. I've also raised money from throughout the country because the conversation around AI is a serious one. If I could wave a magic wand, I would get rid of all of this outside spending. There's no one more motivated in the country than me because there's a super PAC attacking me with $10 million. They said they are going to make an example out of me. But it's not just, hey, I would wave a magic wand. I'm motivated to do this, and when I'm in Congress, I will. I've already committed to sign on to the bills that require disclosure of the super PACs. I would fight for a constitutional amendment to get rid of Citizens United. I think the money in politics has been a hugely corrupting force, and we need a real campaign finance system at the federal level, the way we have one at the city level, to change these conversations entirely. This is core to my campaign and core to my anti-corruption agenda. But make no mistake, there are billionaires spending $10 million against me to benefit everyone else on the stage. And they didn't ask for it. I'm not saying they did, but they're benefiting from it. And the reality of the situation is, because of that targeting, they all want to stand back and say, oh, look at me, I'm not going to do it, but they haven't signed the People's Pledge, they haven't moved in anywhere there. We will get rid of all of this money in politics. There is literally no one motivated in the country more to do that than I am.
Citizens United has been a scourge on our politics. Buckley v. Vallejo, which was the OG Citizens United, which said that money equals speech, that if we have the right to speak, we have the right to spend unlimited amounts of money in politics. That really was the start of all this. And it's It is terrible. I will certainly fight for every bit of legislation we can to strengthen our campaign finance reform system and to expand the Supreme Court. Because if we can't expand the Supreme Court and get a fresh look at the issues involved in Citizens United and Buckley, we're not going to be able to end the flood of corporate cash in our elections. I do not, into my campaign, accept corporate PAC contributions, and I have introduced legislation at the state level to overturn Citizens United on elections here in New York. As for the money that I've raised for New York, I know in an earlier view, I don't think, Nina, I can't speak to you. I suspect you have a lot of New York based, but in an early review, I know that on a percentage basis, I dramatically exceeded my other colleagues up here. And I'm proud to say we are 3 weeks out from this primary, and I have not left the state for a campaign fundraiser. I suspect I'm the only one, maybe at least of the boys on the stage, who could say that. So thank you very much.
I don't have a super PAC. I don't accept money from corporate PACs, from APAC, from big tech or AI companies, none of that. I don't have any special interest money funding my campaign. Our average contribution is around $30. It comes from 65,000 different people across the United States. And I've earned the nickname No PAC Jack. And you're going to hear somebody try to say that I do take PAC money. Not all PAC money is the same, okay? There are super PACs, there are industry PACs, there are union PACs, there are environmental groups that have PACs. I don't have a Republican billionaire funding my campaign. And I'm not here to attack anybody, but I am here to just let people know what's really going on. Because it upsets me. It upsets me that my district, the place I was born and raised, could have an elected congressperson who has a super PAC funded by someone who's not even a Democrat. And as I alluded to before, Alex tells a great story about his campaign and AI companies that are spending against him. He has Anthropic AI spending millions of dollars for him. Maybe that's why their competitors decided to spend against him. He also has taken $3.5 million from Chris Larson, the second highest donor to Donald Trump's inauguration, who is currently funding MAGA Republican candidates in this election cycle who think, as I said before, that ICE agents should get the Medal of Freedom. I understand that all of us want to get money out of politics. What I don't understand is how someone can sit here and say that and then go and turn around and take this kind of money for their campaign right now.
Alex, if you would respond.
Yeah, short, 30 seconds.
I don't know what you're talking about. Chris Larson, I don't think he gave the inauguration. I think that was a company associated with. He gave $11 million to elect Kamala Harris and none to Trump. So it seems like you're the one who can't tell the difference between a Democrat and a Republican. But also I've said, I will take the People's Pledge. I would get money out of politics. I commit to my campaign money that would make for anyone who's attacked by any super PAC. The question is, would you do the same? Because you're sitting here getting money from Mark Andreessen, getting money from Ben Horowitz, getting money from Greg Brock, and benefiting from that, letting the attack ads go, and sending money to make up for it. So would you make that commitment?
Go ahead.
This is unbelievable to me. There is a way that you can donate to a campaign if you're a PAC or an individual. It's called hard money. You donate to a campaign. You're limited at $3,000 for an individual, $3,500, or $5,000 for. You can also have a super PAC. It's called a super PAC because they can spend and raise unlimited amounts of money. Chris Larson, $3.5 million to the You Can Push Back PAC, which stands for Alex Flores. Chris Larson, founder and majority owner of a company called Ripple. Ripple has a super PAC called FairShape. FairShape is funding MAGA Republican candidates all across the country. What I said is true, and I don't need to be lectured on the difference between a Democrat and a Republican. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on now. Nina, that's what I'm saying. We're moving to Nina now.
Yeah, so if anybody here is part of the anti-vax movement, send them my way to get my name out there. I really had not understood this whole PAC thing until this race, and the amount of money is just insane. And as somebody who has raised dollars, I'm not a billionaire, I'm not a celebrity. I cannot believe how much money is spent on congressional races. And I know that may sound naive, but it's out of control. I thought we had a pretty even race, and then a billionaire came and back and won. other billionaires came in back and attacked another. We have a couple celebrities, both two celebrities, and that just brings money and fame. And what I understood from that then was that the polling, so all these debates that put you out of the debate because you haven't polled high enough. You haven't polled high enough because you all didn't get 12 mailers from me. And every mailer that you get costs between $1.25 and upwards of $2, depending on how many folds it has or if it has cutouts. Every text message you get costs 3.5 cents. So if you send 80,000 text messages every 3 days, you can do the math. And by the way, if you get a text message from me, it's actually from me, so please don't write back, stop. But we really do need to stop this super PAC. And I do question colleagues who stand on the stage who are beneficiaries of super PAC money and say they're going to stop super PACs when they get Congress. So this makes the whole playing field uneven, and this makes the whole playing field uneven. So we can start with ourselves in doing something about it.
So now we're moving on to women's rights. And the first, Micah will be the first person to answer. So here's the intro. After decades of progress, women's rights are eroding in the United States, and not just on the reproductive front. The gender pay gap has widened for the last 2 consecutive years, the first time that has happened since the 1960s, when federal data began being reported. There have also been devastating cuts to federal child care programs. Maternal mortality rates are going up, and there have been targeted attacks on the position of women leaders in the military as well as in civil society. Much of this seems to be driven by a toxic notion of what it means to be a man, that real men dominate others, take what they want, and make no apologies. Here's the question. Why should women, who make up more than half of the voting public, trust you with higher office? And what are you ready to do to help women gain back the rights they are losing?
The most important decision that a woman can make should be in her hands with the advice and consultation of her doctor, and not the government and lawmakers and politicians who are out to control bodily autonomy. When the Supreme Court decision came out in the Dobbs case, a dark day in our country's history, I was policy director for the state, and I immediately got to work in writing and passing the most progressive laws in the country to protect women and doctors who provide reproductive health care from persecution and prosecution by red states, as well as the Equal Rights Amendment to enshrine reproductive freedom in the New York State Constitution. I was also proud to help drive the expansion of child care assistance in New York State, doubling access to child care assistance. And as part of that work, there are now hundreds of thousands of women in this state who do not need to make a choice between being able to spend time with their newborn and paying the bills. We also enacted a first in the nation program of paid prenatal leave to address the infant mortality and maternal mortality crisis, to ensure that women can go see a doctor during pregnancy without having to sacrifice much needed wages. I know what it means to use legislative power to protect women's reproductive health care. I will bring that fighting spirit to Congress.
In 2024, reproductive freedom was a central point of the Harris campaign, and a difference between the Democratic ticket and the Republican ticket. I was really proud to go time after time, more than 5 times on the reproductive rights tour bus all across the country in every single swing state in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and Wisconsin to advocate for and stick up for what I think is a defining issue of our time. We need to codify Roe v. Wade, the right to privacy and reproductive freedom here in this country. We need to repeal the Hyde Amendment to make sure that the federal government can fund abortion access programs in this country. We also need to provide an example of, and I think that I can do this, of men who are willing to stick up for women. And I say that next to a female candidate who I have tremendous respect for, and no advocate on those issues than a female candidate herself. Would argue that I would be more than committed to sticking up for and on behalf of women and providing a counterexample to this insane vote that we're seeing from the Trump administration that is infecting the minds of so many young men in our country on social media and in real life. So this is something I care a lot about. I was raised by very strong women, and it really is a defining hallmark issue and difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And we need to do everything we can, pass the Equal Rights Amendment, use all of our legislative power to stick up for and on behalf of women in this country.
I wasn't really expecting this question, and I'm not sure that being a woman is enough to say that you're gonna stand up for women. So let me start with that, and let me also give a shout out to Laura Dunn, who's another candidate who's not in this room and is a real champion for sexual violence and prevention of sexual violence against women. We are under tremendous attack, and I want to also be clear that for me, women are all women, and trans women are women and deserve equal protection as humanity. Mifepristone, right now, we're waiting for, there was a stay in the Supreme Court, the abortion pill, which now cannot be, well, now it can be transferred against state lines. That will be a major blow to the states that have now restricted abortion access. As we know, before abortion was legal, many women died of abortion, and that's happening now. That the major cause of maternal mortality around the world is when abortion is illegal. I also want to talk about a new website. I spoke about this on a panel a couple of days ago. I want you all to look up something called moms.gov, moms.gov on your phones. It's a government website, and the government website was announced by the Trump administration. And it said, if you're pregnant, check out this website. And the website has two parts, and one is healthcare, and the other part directs you to an outside provider of anti-abortion services. It's an anti-abortion website where they're collecting your data. I didn't need to get a text message to stand up and fight for that. I'm watching this all day, every day, because this is about us and this is about our rights. So that'll be me.
We need to close the gender wage gap. And I'm proud to, in New York, carry the bill on benefit transparency, to not just to build on our pay transparency laws, but so that women also see the benefit packages that are offered as they move. I also think that it is so overdue that we think about what's causing this rise in machismo and the view of what it means to be a man. It's social media and it's the algorithms. And I can tell you, as a maybe somewhat young man, very quickly, those algorithms will take you into bad places if you let them. And that is a part of the conversation that we have let go that needs to strongly be regulated. We need to recognize the Equal Rights Amendment. It has been passed by enough states, and it is time that we actually say that it is part of the Constitution. And I would continue Carolyn Maloney's work to do that. But my first speech on the floor of the State Assembly was arguing for the New York Equal Rights Amendment. And I told the story of my great-grandmother who died because abortion was illegal in New York. Like most people who have an abortion, she had kids at the time, 3, including my grandmother, who was 7 at the time. She knew she couldn't have a 4th. She borrowed $250 in 1943, paid to have a procedure done. It went wrong. She started bleeding out, but she was too afraid of the law to go get health care. It devastated the family. My grandmother and her younger brother were split up, raised by different people. They're both alive today. My grandma's 90. They don't really have a relationship. That story should only be relevant for my family. But because of this administration and this Supreme Court, it is more and more relevant today. In my bones, I know we need to codify Roe v. Wade, and I know that we need to be giving everyone the rights that generations of women have counted on before.
This has been an incredible forum, and I'm going to ask your indulgence to go past 8 o'clock because we have one last question on foreign policy. Article 1 of the Constitution, this will go, Jack will be first to answer. Article 1 of the Constitution clearly gives Congress and only Congress, the power to declare war. And yet, despite the War Powers Act of 1973, presidents have over the years launched the US on all sorts of military interventions that are really wars in all but name, most recently in Iran. Here's the question. What realistically can Congress do to take back this constitutional power from the president? And how will you personally help to make that happen?
Thank you. Yeah, I have opposed the war in Iran since day one. I think it is misguided. I have no sympathy for the Iranian government, but I think that even if you were going to take Trump at his word for his stated mission and goals for launching this war, this is not going to do anything to keep Americans more safe or countries in the region more safe. We need to strengthen the War Powers Resolution. We need to start by actually having a vote on the War Powers Resolution and make sure that Congress goes on record. We need to strengthen the War Powers Resolution by making sure that it has actual teeth and that is not ignored, as we have all become accustomed to, by Democrat and Republican administration alike. We also need to do what we can to make sure that the United States isn't perpetuating cycles of violence in the Middle East and elsewhere. And that's why I support the Sanders resolution, Sanders bill, to stop sending offensive weapons to Israel and stop sending bulldozers to Israel to be used to take back land in violation of international law in the West Bank. And I think that we need to give clear answers on these questions. These are important questions of war and peace, perhaps the most important that anyone who's elected to Congress is going to be answering. And I think there's a lot more that we can do. I think I can go to Congress, I know I can, and elevate the position of this district and make sure that our voices are heard loud and clear, and that we are not sitting idly by and letting the tail wag the dog with other countries around the world dictating our foreign policy.
The president has once again violated the law. The 60 days has passed and he needs to be impeached. And if this is not a reason, I really can't think of another one. And I look at failures as well. I think of Mr. Schumer and Mr. Jeffries in this case. I mean, we saw but the Knicks, right? You're down 3-4, you rally and you fix the thing.
2-1.
Oh, 2-1, sorry. You know, we are using US taxpayer dollars to kill civilians. And I don't care if you call it war crimes or crimes against humanity or genocide, call it what you will. It is just wrong. And we need to stop it. And we need people that will stand up to stop that. The war in Iran has gotten us no further, no objectives. Venezuela, Cuba, you name it. We have an unaccountable president who's just jumping into other countries. He's dismantled diplomacy. Diplomacy is a real thing. It's how we talk to other countries in a rational way and come together in a solution. We've left the UN. We're about to leave NATO. We're leaving all of the areas. This is a proven evidence-based way of negotiating a solution. We don't do it by chucking bombs and killing people. Like Jack, the Block the Bombs people, the Block the Bombs is an act that I would also fully support. And frankly, until and unless Israel behaves better, I don't think we should be providing defensive weapons either.
This is the last question I'm going to have to run after this. Thank you for hosting. Thank you all for being here and staying late. This has been a wonderful forum. Donald Trump is a corrupt maniac that has sent us into foreign interventions that are leading to dead American soldiers, that are leading to dead civilians in other countries, that has made us weaker and poorer, and he should be nowhere near the office of the commander-in-chief. And the reason he is able to do so much is because Congress has not stood up for their powers. Congress has the power to declare war, and we should be reclaiming it. The War Powers Resolutions are privileged. We should be doing a War Powers Resolution every single day. Make the Republicans take a vote that they want to continue this going. Make them go on the record. Congress is the one who funds the military. And Donald Trump's asking for $1 trillion budget for the Department of Defense, the largest ever. That should be for a department, by the way, the only federal department that has never passed an audit. We should at the very least demand that an audit is passed before we're sending any money into these foreign ventures and these foreign affairs. Congress needs to rediscover their teeth here. We have them. We've just been so cowed because what they do is they say, well, here is a big bill that has like a 3% wage increase for the troops and all of this other nonsense. Are you really going to vote against the troops? You need someone who's willing to stand up, have the conversation and say, I support our troops. I support our veterans. I will be the last one on the field fighting for our veterans. And also what is happening right now is wrong.
I completely agree that Donald Trump has taken recklessness and amorality to new heights. And we see it in this reckless and wrong war in Iran that has cost civilian lives, the lives of American servicemen and women, and billions of dollars. It needs to end right now. I would love to be able to say that Democrats do not bear responsibility as well, but the Democratic Party does. Every president since the passage of the War Powers Resolution has flouted it. Members of Congress from both parties have been complicit because they'd in many cases rather not have to weigh in on matters of war and peace. And so we need to bring this war to an end. We need to impeach and remove Donald Trump. And then the question is, how do we make sure that no future president can ever do what Donald Trump has done? And we need to fix the War Powers Resolution Act. And that means bringing the definition of war into the modern era so that no president can say, well, that's what I'm doing over there. It looks like war, it kills like war, but it isn't really war. We need to give somebody the power to enforce the War Powers Resolution Act because the way it's constructed now, there's virtually no one that can hold a president accountable. Servicemen or our service people can't even take legal action to enforce the War Powers Resolution. They're the people most affected by it. And so I've laid out a plan. If you go to my website, michaellasher.com/project 2026, you will read my plans for how we rebuild these laws. It's why I'm endorsed by Congressman Nadler, who spoke out against the war in Iraq as illegal and immoral, who impeached Donald Trump not once, but twice. I will continue that moral leadership in Congress. Thank you so very much.
We're over time. We're going to go to pledging statements. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for being here. It is a privilege to be on this stage and to have you all here as an audience tonight. Again, I'm not the typical candidate for public office. I have a different set of life experiences. I have spent my life working hard on the issues that I care about. Climate change at the State Department. I got an education, a law degree, and a business degree so that I could come to you today to speak from a place of knowledge and release real plans to help New Yorkers. I also spent recently 2024 campaigning across the country, waving the flag for our party, inspiring a generation to enter public service and to get excited about our party and politics. And if you ask me, that's exactly what we need to do in this election going forward, is bring new people into our party, new energy and new ideas. That's what I bring. I'm honored to be here tonight on your stage. I'm honored to call many of my neighbors. I live in Chelsea. It's not so far away. And again, thank you very much for being here. This has been fantastic.
I was really grateful to you for inviting me tonight. I was waiting for this speed round and I was deciding between my favorite place in the district being La Nueva Escuelita, for those of you that remember that club, or Albanelli, which is where my kid danced for 10 years. But on a slightly more serious note, in March of 2020, my father was one of the first people to get COVID-19, and he died alone at home with me. I'm an epidemiologist. I'm not a medical doctor, with no palliative care, no oxygen, no nothing. Just knowing he was there with me and he wouldn't die alone. The city, state, and federal government were fighting at war, and I really understood the dysfunction. I then fought Albany to get ventilators down to the city to keep our kids in school and to get older, low-income residents vaccines first. And from there, the Biden administration asked me to run their $7 billion COVID-19 program, which distributed 500 million vaccines for COVID-19 around the world. I know that where there's a will, there's a way. And when government has a mission, it can get stuff done. I'm somebody who's worked in government. I understand broken systems. I know how to fix them. As I said when I started, I'm a fighter. I'm a scientist and I'm a mom. Washington really doesn't know what's coming. So thank you for your time.
Let's give our two again, big hand of applause.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We listen very, very carefully for a lot of information. Thank you so much.